Hi everyone, it's Kathy. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I'll be sharing how I created a 3D pop-up fun fold card that when it's folded down, it'll fit into a regular A2 sized envelope. The products that I'll be using are the Retro Christmas Confetti Mix by This Calls for Confetti, the large Merry Word die, the elf sized stamp set because they're super cute, the Happy Sayings stamp set, the decorated tree die set, and the mix and match paper pack. I did all of the die cutting and coloring off camera, but I did want to share how I decorated my tree. The garland I had die cut from white cardstock and ran it through my Xyron machine. I wanted to add some sparkle and I wanted to do it before I added the garland to the tree, so I used my Wink of Stella glitter pen for that. The decorated tree die set is one of my favorites because there are options on how big you want to make your tree. Since my little elves are so small, I used the smaller dies to create the tree, and then I die cut the trunk of the tree from white cardstock and just used a Copic marker to color that in. I used liquid glue to adhere my tree together, and then it was time to start decorating the tree. Since the Wink of Stella glitter pen needed a little bit of time to dry, that's why I did those first. But once it was dry, I added the garland to my tree first. By adding the garland first, it helps me keep from over decorating the tree with too many ornaments. Once I had all of the garland adhered, I did use my scissors to trim off the pieces that were hanging off the edge, and then it was time to finish decorating it. The pink ornaments are from the Decorate a Tree die set, and I had colored them with a Copic marker and then used a white gel pen to add stripes to them. And I also ran those through my Xyron machine so it would be easy to adhere them to my tree. After I had the ornaments in place, I dug through the Retro Christmas Confetti Mix and picked out some of the silver sparkle pieces that were in there and used liquid glue to adhere those in place. I also chose some of the light blue presents and just used liquid glue to adhere those as well. One thing I really like about the This Calls for Confetti mixes is they have lots of bits and pieces that you can dig through and use as embellishments, but they're also great for doing regular shaker cards. For the tree topper, I chose 2 of the pink snowflakes and glued those together before I glued it to the top of the tree. Moving right along to the card. For the card base, you'll need a piece of cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 10 1/2 inches. Then you'll need another piece of white cardstock that measures 3 by 5 1/4 inches. I'll have all of the measurements, including where to score on the cardstock, listed in the description box below for you. So I'm going to start out by scoring the larger piece that's 4 1/4 by 10 1/2 inches, and I'm going to score at 1/2 inch, 1 3/4 inches, 3 3/4 inches, and 5 inches. For the smaller piece that's going to be the front pop-out shelf, I scored that at 1/2 inch and 1 3/4 inches. One thing that I would recommend for this particular card is that you use a very heavy cardstock for the card base and for the little pop-up shelf. I used 110-pound Neenah Classic Crest cardstock. And after I had done all of the scoring, I couldn't find my bone folder, so I just used an acrylic block to burnish those score lines. And I did flip them back and forth and scored both sides. You want to make sure that you burnish the score lines really well to have really crisp creases so the card can stand on its own once you're done. Now that all the score lines are burnished really well, it's time to add the patterned paper. I added this piece of patterned paper, which is slightly smaller than 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, to the very back. The next piece of patterned paper, you want to make sure that you fold up the bottom of the card and adhere this piece of patterned paper in between the second and third score lines on the front. Now to get that first shelf, you're going to add adhesive on the smallest score tab at the very top. And to make sure that I got that tab adhered in the right place, what I did was I folded so that the patterned paper was at the very bottom. So that's very important. Then I folded that tab back with the adhesive on it and pressed that into place. I would recommend that you use a very strong adhesive for this to make sure it all stays together. Now for the smaller front pop-out shelf, you're going to add adhesive to that top small tab. On the main card base, you want to push it down so that you have that white stripe between the 2 pieces of patterned paper. I found it easiest to line up that polka dot paper in the center of the bottom shelf before I pressed the adhesive into place. And then once I lifted up that bottom shelf and made sure that that is where I wanted it. Then I flipped up that smaller piece and burnished the adhesive really well. Once I brought that piece back down, I turned it on inside to make sure that both of those shelves were nice and square. I added a tiny little bit of adhesive on the bottom of the polka dot paper panel just to hold it into place. You don't need a whole lot, and I wouldn't recommend burnishing it until you flip it on its side like that and make sure that those shelves are square. Once those are adhered, go ahead and flatten that card up by pushing the bottom up and press on those score lines one more time. Next, it's time to just finish up the card by adding the tree, and to make sure that the tree doesn't go past the top of the card, I push that bottom panel up, add adhesive to the back of the tree, and then adhere that in place. After my tree was adhered in place, I had added foam squares to the back of my little elves and just popped those guys into place. To finish up the card, I had die cut the Merry Word die 3 times from white cardstock and once from pink cardstock. And when I stacked the white die cut words on the pink die cut word, I offset it so it would be a small pink shadow. I heat embossed the word Christmas onto pink cardstock and cut that out. I used liquid glue to adhere the Christmas sentiment to the Merry die cut word before putting it on the card, just to make it easier for me. And then I used liquid glue on the back of the Merry die cut word and the Christmas sentiment tab and adhered that to the front of the card. And that's it. That finishes up my card for today. I do have another sample where I created this same card using the Happy Feet stamp set and the Christmas Eve paper pack, and I wanted to share that sample here as well. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, we'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.